I had a client, Theresa, who used to say she was just gifted, like supernaturally intuitive. She'd call herself the human equivalent of a mood ring because she could read a room in zero point 0.2 seconds, feel someone's energy shift through a text message, detect disappointment before the other person even knew they were disappointed. She was basically the emotional version of a bomb sniffing dog, except instead of explosive, she was detecting the possibility that someone might not like her, might be grumpy with her, might not be anything other than thrilled with her. And to that, everyone around her said, "Oh my goodness, Theresa, you're so empathetic. You are such a good friend. You always know exactly what people need. Wow." And that was cool. Except here's the thing nobody talks about. Theresa wasn't just being empathetic. Of course, she was being empathetic. She was being a good friend. She loved her friends. But really, at her core, she was being strategic. The way those of us with codependent, perfectionist, and people-pleasing habits will. She wasn't just tuning into people because she cared about their feelings. And of course, she cared about their feelings, but she was tuning into people because her nervous system had decided that other people's emotions were her early warning system for whether she was about to get emotionally nuked or not. There was this one night, and she described it to me with such clarity that I could feel it in my own chest and bones. She was lying in bed at 3 a.m. doing her nightly anxiety audit. You know the one. Did I say too much on that Zoom call? Did my story make everyone else uncomfortable? Should I text an apology for existing? And then, cutting through all that mental noise, she heard this voice from somewhere deep in her belly. Not a thought, more of a knowing. And it said, "You don't know how to feel okay unless someone else tells you that you are." That was the moment Theresa first understood what I call emotional outsourcing. But here's what was really happening in Theresa's nervous system during all this hypervigilant monitoring. Her brain had developed what neuroscientists call hyperactive mirror neurons. Essentially, she was constantly mimicking and absorbing other people's emotional states as a way to predict and prevent rejection. From having grown up with emotional outsourcing in her household, Theresa's ventral vagal complex, the part of her nervous system responsible for safe social connection, had effectively gone offline years ago. Instead, she was operating from a chronic state of sympathetic arousal, constantly scanning for threats that looked like disappointed faces or withdrawn energy. This pattern usually develops in childhood when our caregivers' emotional states directly impact our emotional, physical, spiritual, or other energy of safety. Theresa learned early that her dad's bad mood meant danger, mom's stress meant chaos, her super anxious sister's super anxiety meant that she wasn't getting attention again. And overall, she learned that her own needs were a luxury the stressed out, spread thin family simply couldn't afford. So her brilliant nervous system adapted. Become an emotional radar system, it said. Anticipate everyone's needs, and maybe, just maybe, you'll stay safe. It's not just people-pleasing with a fancy psychology degree. It's way more insidious than that. It's the invisible architecture of how we survive when we've learned that our safety depends on other people's moods. It's checking someone's face before you let yourself know what you feel. It's that full-body panic when someone you love is disappointed in you, even when you logically know you did nothing wrong. It's craving feedback that doesn't just validate you, but orients you. Like, okay, now I know where I stand. Now I know who I am. Now I know if I'm safe. Emotional outsourcing makes other people your mirror, your GPS, your report card, and your security system all rolled into one. And here's the cruel part. It actually works. It works great. It works wonderfully until it doesn't. Because eventually Theresa woke up and realized she had no idea what she wanted for dinner, let alone what she wanted from her own life. She was fluent in everyone else's needs and completely illiterate in her own. She'd been choosing other people's comfort over her own clarity for so long, she'd forgotten what clarity even felt like. And her body, her poor exhausted body was certainly keeping track. The headaches that felt like someone was using her skull as a percussion instrument, the digestive system that was more unpredictable than the weather, the bone-deep exhaustion that no amount of sleep or coffee could fix, the brain fog that made her feel like she was thinking through thick syrup. She'd been everyone's emotional scaffolding for so long that she'd forgotten to build a foundation for herself. What Theresa needed to understand, and what no one had ever told her, was that this wasn't a character flaw. This wasn't her being too sensitive or too caring. It didn't mean anything was wrong with her. This was a nervous system adaptation, an amazing, albeit exhausting strategy her body had developed to survive in relationships where safety felt conditional. That hypervigilance, that chronic niceness that made her face hurt from constant smiling, that inability to say no without spiraling into a shame hurricane, it was all adaptation. Her nervous system doing everything it could to stay in connection, no matter the cost to her actual self. The science behind this is fascinating and heartbreaking. When we're constantly monitoring other people's emotional states, our brains literally rewire themselves. The neural pathways responsible for interoception, our ability to sense our own internal states, actually weaken from disuse. Meanwhile, the pathways responsible for reading external cues become superhighways of activity. Theresa had learned this young from caregivers who needed her to be their emotional support system instead of, a child. From family systems that rewarded compliance over authenticity, from a world that taught her that goodness equals self-erasure. But here's the thing, and Theresa needed to really hear this. Nobody can live outsourced forever. Eventually the bill comes due, and that bill is always paid with pieces of yourself. The really devastating part, Theresa had gotten so good at reading everyone else that she'd completely lost touch with her own internal weather system. She could tell you exactly what her coworker needed when they were stressed, but she had no idea what she needed when she was overwhelmed. She'd become this incredible emotional translator for everyone else while speaking a completely foreign language to herself. This is what emotional outsourcing does. It turns you into everyone's therapist and caretaker except your own. Another client described it perfectly. It's like I'm a smoke detector that only works for other people's fires. My own house could be burning down and I'd be across town helping someone else check their batteries. This chronic outsourcing creates emotional dysregulation. When your nervous system loses its ability to self-soothe and self-orient, you become dependent on external validation, not just for your self-worth, but for your basic sense of okayness in the world. Here's what I wanted Theresa to know and what I want you to know, my darling. You can come home to yourself. You can learn to source your safety from the inside instead of frantically trying to control everyone else's emotional weather. The journey back to yourself starts with understanding that your nervous system isn't broken and never has been. Your hypervigilance, your people-pleasing, your chronic anxiety about other people's moods, those are wonderful, amazing survival strategies that once kept little you safe, but are now keeping grown you small. All of this is exactly why I wrote my new book, End Emotional Outsourcing, How to Overcome Your Codependent, Perfectionist, and People-Pleasing Habits, to give you a roadmap back to your own inner knowing. In part 1, you'll discover the neuroscience behind why you do this and how these patterns formed. And in part 2, you'll learn practical tools to become truly interdependent and to trust yourself again. The book launches September 30th, and you can secure your copy right now at beatricealbina.com/book and get immediate access to transformative bonus materials that you're going to want to start today instead of waiting until you get the book. Don't wait, my beauty. Start your journey home to yourself now, today. It's just a few clicks away. And my beauty, this isn't about becoming selfish or stopping caring about other people. No way. It's about learning to care about yourself too. It's about remembering that you matter just as much as everyone else you've been taking care of. You weren't meant to live your life on the outside of yourself. You were meant to come home. Let me show you how.